When I was 19 in college, I had a roommate go, "Hey, let's go buy a duplex together and let's go rent out the other side." And I said, "Yeah, I don't want to have debt. I don't want to deal with that." I passed up on the opportunity, and he's a full-time real estate investor with about 195 doors to his name personally that he owns and manages through his companies, and pretty much does whatever he wants.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset.
Quick disclaimer that I am not a CPA, attorney, or financial advisor. My thoughts and opinions expressed in this podcast are provided for education and informational purposes only. My views are from being a successful business owner, entrepreneur, and real estate professional for over 20 years.
I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in.
Welcome, listeners, to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Today, our guest is Cameron Gentile. I'm excited to welcome him back for episode number 2, talking more about short-term rentals. Today, we're going to learn more about the operations aspect of short-term rentals, exactly what that looks like from either self-managing or using a third party, and other aspects that Cameron and his wife do with his company. So welcome back to the podcast show, Cameron.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, excited to learn a little bit more. I know episode 1, we were able to dive in more to analyzing and choosing the right deal. I think there was a lot of takeaways, and we talked about that even after we stopped recording the show. I've been in real estate for 25 years, and I learned a lot myself. So I'm excited to dive in. We have so much information to unpack that we had to do episode 2. So this is a bonus section talking more about operations. So Cameron, if you don't mind, let's do a little bit of an introduction, and you can tell us a little bit about, kind of who you are and your background before we dive into the ops part.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a chiropractor outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. And my wife and I are involved in short-term rentals and looking to get into multifamilies in the future. And we found a really good way to grow as a family and actually work together, which was often recommended against. So we've had a lot of good times there. I've had the pleasure of knowing you for almost 25 years now. So I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, Cameron was one of the first people I met when I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina 25 years ago. So he has the honor of being the first guest on my podcast by leaps and bounds. I'm excited for that. So hey, let's talk first about how interesting it is that we met each other 25 years ago, and now we're talking about real estate investing. What made you get interested in investing in real estate?
It's something that's always an interest, and something that I always thought was out of reach. I always thought you had to have a lot of disposable income to jump in, and it's actually a bit of regret. When I was 19 in college, I had a roommate go, "Hey, let's go buy a duplex together and let's go rent out the other side." And now that I'm older and wiser, it's called house hacking. And I said, "Yeah, I don't want to have debt. I don't want to deal with that." I passed up on the opportunity, and he's a full-time real estate investor with about 195 doors to his name personally that he owns and manages through his companies, and pretty much does whatever he wants. So it's always been there, following him and seeing what's good. Just like pretty much everybody in this world, rich dad, poor dad kind of opened my eyes a little bit years ago. And now it's been a journey of how do I get to do that? And that's how I kind of ended up. We started with short-term rental because for us, the cash flow and the cash on cash return was a way for us to kind of speed up the process. And we're looking to diversify across multiple investment opportunities.
Yeah, I love that. And I have always been very heavy on real estate, but even within the real estate sector, I definitely diversify as well, which I think is exactly a passion that we share. So let's talk about, first of all, as we dive into learning more about operations. Episode 1, I think it was great to talk about how do we find the right deal and analyze the right one. Now let's talk about how do we manage it, right? Now that you've found the property, you purchased it and own it, now what? So walk us through the kind of the operations, and did you go down the route of self-managing it yourself versus hiring a third party?
We are doing self-managing. Third parties, and for where we invested, and now really for the way the market is, third parties can take a big chunk, anywhere from 10 to 40%. And that can really hurt you on your investment, especially if you're trying to turn over and repeat, or you're trying to turn that money over and put it somewhere else. And management is kind of broken into two areas. You have management companies where some of them do everything. And it's great if you don't want to have any responsibility and you just want to check in the mail and you leave it up to them. And the downside is they use and abuse your property and they don't really take care of it. And unfortunately, the reviews stick to you as well. So if your property isn't doing so great and the reviews aren't doing so hot, it affects your property's ability to rent on the major platforms like Airbnb and VRBO. So you have to really vet them well, and you do have to stay on top of them, which is difficult because most of us don't live in the town that our short-term rentals are in, especially if they're vacation homes. There is a second side to that. It's called co-hosting, where you take an experienced individual that has done a lot of work with these platforms, and their profile is tied to your profile. So you're still in charge of finding your cleaner and your maintenance person. If you're lucky, they have one in the area. And they're going to take a percentage. It's usually not 40%, but some of them are usually between 15 to 20, sometimes 25. And you're handing it over to them so they can handle the messaging. You can be as hands-on or hands-off as you want. So I might have a co-host that takes care of all my messaging and booking and everything else, but I'm still taking care of, I'm going to hire this cleaner, I'm going to deal with this rate. I still have control in what I'm doing. Where a management company, you sign a contract and all they care about is occupancy numbers. Hey, we had 95% occupancy. Great. You rented out my 5-bedroom for $99 a night to get there. And it got beat up. So we chose to self-manage. And there's a lot of tools that make it easier. I won't say it's passive, and anybody that tells you self-managing a short-term rental is passive is just not being honest with you. It is work. And when I get a text message, and you guys were over for dinner a while ago, and I had to check my phone because we had 2 rentals going out at the same time, and one couldn't figure out how to turn the hot tub on. And we had somebody have a bat break in, and they were chasing a bat in our house, and we had to deal with that. So, it's all types of unique things when you self-manage. But for us to save the percentage and to have a good team in place with a good backup, 85% of the time, our guests aren't an issue. 15% of the time, it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to have to put something into it.
I wasn't going to bring up the bat issue in your house because I didn't want to rub salt in the wound. But gosh, I would really love for you to tell that story a little bit more. How did a bat get in your rental property, and how did that go down with the tenant communicating that to you?
So what we suspect is that they left the door open at night. They had a fire going. We're up in the mountains in the time of year. There's plenty of bats in and around because there's plenty of caves in and around. And we got a phone call when they were getting ready to check out, and they sent me a picture of a bat roosting on top of our ceiling in the living room. You have to notify them about rabies, and you need to go get checked, and you need to go do these things. I think it's going to be a huge bill. And fortunately, they didn't go down that road, and everybody's okay. And the spin of it is the next guest that came in found a dead bat in the living room. So my cleaner and maintenance guys scoured the place. They swore they got it out. They couldn't find it. Well, it was hiding somewhere. So our next guest checked in to find a dead flying rodent sitting on the floor. So needless to say, there was some refund issues there. Unfortunately, we didn't get hammered on a review, and we had a good laugh about it, but not ideal what you want when someone checks in and 30 seconds later, you're getting a message on the platform. You have a dead bat in your living room. So, it never ceases to amaze me, the fun that we've had and the things that have happened to our properties up to this point.
Yeah, I would love for us to sit down and write a coffee table book sometime about all the things that have surprised us of what has happened in rentals and what tenants have said. And
yes,
I actually had one yesterday. I'll save to another podcast that just blew my mind and makes me invest in passive multifamily more and more.
It'll push you in that direction quickly.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about software. What is there software out there that you utilize to help manage the operations? Since your and let's be clear, your rental property is a couple hours away from you. It is not in the same zip code as you, correct?
Right. Rental property is 2.5 hours away on a good day, and we just can't get up there if there's a problem. The short-term rental aspect is heavy on communication and messaging if you're going to do it right. And that is a huge time suck until you find something to do it for you. And there's a lot of very inexpensive add-on pieces of software or web-based things that you can do that tie into your platform. So the first is a property management system. We use a company called Hospitable. It costs us roughly $17 to $20 per listing. which is insignificant. And it handles all of my automated messaging from the time that you have an inquiry to the time you've left. All that messaging is pre-programmed. It takes care of my locks. We use the Slage on code. So as soon as you have a confirmed booking, it auto programs my locks with the last four of your phone number within a booking parameter that we want. So our locks are active 30 minutes before check-in and 30 minutes active, because sometimes people are just late.
Yeah.
And we make sure that that's set up for them. And it also has a bit of an AI component in where you could put in prefabricated messages for frequently asked questions. So if someone's there, hey, they never read your book, they never read anything until there's a problem. They say, I can't get on your Wi-Fi, and they send me a message. It'll automatically pick up Wi-Fi, send a document that I've already created for a troubleshooting issue. And then on the bottom, if this doesn't solve your problem, get a hold of me. Then I have to personally get involved. So for the most part, a lot of it's automated, unless there's a very direct question. The pricing we have automated as well. You still have to be an active participant. You have to pay attention. But we use a piece of software called Price Labs, and it jumps us in, and it gives a backdoor look because it's plugged into Airbnb. It's plugged into Vrbo. It knows what's the utilization rate in your area. So it's looking at supply and demand. It knows if there's special events to a point on what's in there. And it will skew my pricing very similar to what apartment complex would for their availability. It's on a dynamic rotation 24 hours. So my pricing will go up or down within parameters that I set. So I set a basement price that it can't go below. And I set a mean price that it works with. I don't set a cap. If it wants to set something 5x to what we normally have and somebody wants to book it, fantastic. But it will shift back and forth on the demand in our area. A wide range of selections for minimums. You could put a lot of rule sets in. They have a great back-end training system to do that, but our pricing is automated. Now, I will go in and alter it myself if I want to change a couple dates that, hey, I need to get this week booked, or I know that historically these months are going to be slow, so I'm going to skew my numbers 10, 20% below what they may recommend so that I could try to book it out further. So you're still in control, but it helps quite a bit. And then there's software we use, Turno, for our cleaning service. Actually, our cleaner turned us onto it. So now they get an automatic notification of what's there. It's confirmed. If I need to say I want to have a deep clean on this day, I can send a message there. I know who's in my building, what they did. If they need supplies, it sends right back to me, 100% automated. So it makes it very easy to self-manage. You're taking out a lot of the heavy lifting. And once you get those systems set up, and there's definitely other systems there, especially in the property management side, it takes a lot of the work off of you. Now you're just booking and taking care of problems when they arrive, as opposed to, the average stay for us is 5 messages. Your thank you for booking, your pre-visit message. We have a guidebook that we created that makes it easy. That has to get sent out. We check in the day after they're there to see if there's any problems, and then they get a checkout message. Even if I was just copy and pasting and doing that, that's all steps for me. And I already run another business and I want to spend time with my family. So if I can automate that stuff, it's great. Yeah. But there are a lot of options out there.
So, do you use dynamic pricing? So as you were saying, so yes. The rates, the AI is going to fluctuate the rates based yes. on supply and demand curves. And yes. then do you rent both through Airbnb, VRBO? Can you go back and forth between both platforms, or do you have to choose one?
Yes, and that's where you have to make sure your property management software is compatible. So we use Airbnb and VRBO and direct bookings, as we're building out a direct booking site to market on our own to take care of that. You can, without anything external, you can link the calendars of Airbnb to VRBO. So that way you can try to avoid double bookings, because cancellations now, both companies are very hard on host for canceling anything that's confirmed, even if it's a glitch in software. Yeah. So yes, you can connect that to make sure that everything's covered out.
That's awesome. Do you mind, before we ask you the last question, can you rattle off all of those softwares that you use again?
Yep. So we're listed on Airbnb and VRBO, which is the majority for both. We use for our property management, we use a company called Hospitable. They also happen to make the Turno product that we use for our cleaners. We use Price Labs for our dynamic pricing. And we use the Slage on code for our locks, which is tied into our Hospitable for automatic booking there. We do run a behind the scenes that we talked about in our first one. We do keep an active Air DNA so that we can keep an eye on the market and how it's been sliding in the occupancy, because it's still one of the best ways to evaluate your market, so that we can look at our pricing. If we've seen a significant drop, we can jump in there and we can make a change outside of Price Labs. It's a little bit more reactive.
That's perfect. So takeaway for today, listeners, I hope you got an opportunity to hear all the different software and management tools that are out there. Technology is created for all of us to be able to utilize it and make our lives easier and also make the customer experience easier as well. So hope all those takeaways were good and everyone will write those down. Last question for you. And on our last show, Cameron, I was able to ask you kind of what your highs and lows of your real estate, journey have been. The second part that I would love to ask you is, what have you learned? What have you learned along your real estate journey that you would love to share with others?
That you can do it. I think that's the big thing. You don't need to be a realtor. You don't need to be an expert in any category. You need to be knowledgeable. But the fact that this is something that you can learn and do, and for us, it's fun. We're checking off a lot of stones in one place. We're protecting ourselves from a tax standpoint. We're making some revenue. We're able to do a lot of different things with getting into real estate. And we'd like it to the point that our goal is to have enough properties under management that it removes my wife from her job and she just moves to the management of those properties. So it's been a tremendous learn for us is, hey, anybody can do this as long as you do a little bit of legwork and avoid the paralysis by analysis.
I love that. And lastly, if our audience wants to connect with you, how can they do that? And what is your company's website for booking if somebody wants to come up to you?
Yeah, the easiest way to get hold of us is Up and Away Properties. And upawayproperties.com will be set up here in probably the next 2 weeks for a direct booking site. Hospitable just made that very easy to do through our platform where they auto-generate it. And we'd be happy to chat with anybody and help them along the way.
Outstanding. Yeah. Cameron, thank you for coming along the show. Really appreciate it. And thank you for adding value to all of our listeners today about short-term rental operations.
Sure thing. Thanks.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.